course they let someone like you sit here, no class, no polish, pretending you belong in first class like it's some charity raffle. The voice slices through the first-class cabin before the plane even finishes boarding. A clear plastic cup tilts. Ice slides. Dark liquid splashes across a beige blazer. Gasps ripple. The woman in the aisle doesn't apologize. She smiles. Ava Reynolds, 38, black, composed, a senior civil rights attorney with 15 years of federal litigation behind her, looks down at her soaked sleeve. Her jaw tightens not in fear but in restraint. She's learned restraint the hard way. Ivy League education, federal clerkship. A career built on proving herself twice over in rooms that never expected her to enter. Across from her stands Claire Whitmore, 45. White, immaculate, her hair smooth and expensive, her posture trained by decades of power-adjacent life. She is the wife of a corporate board member, though no one here needs to know that yet. Her eyes gleam with recognition. Not surprise, recognition. "Oh, don't look at me like that," Claire says lightly, wiping her fingers on a napkin. "It's turbulence, or nerves, or maybe you're just not used to first-class service." Ava exhales slowly. Passengers watch. Phones hover. "I'm fine," Ava says evenly. "It was an accident." Claire laughs short, sharp, cruel. "Sweetheart, nothing about you says accident. You people are always bumping into things you don't understand." The air changes. A flight attendant freezes mid-step. Ava straightens. "Excuse me?" Claire leans closer, lowering her voice just enough to make it intimate and poisonous. "Let's not play offended. I've flown commercial airlines my entire life. I know how this works. People who don't belong always cause scenes." Then they cry about passenger rights like it's some magic spell. Ava doesn't raise her voice. That's what Claire wants. "I paid for this seat," Ava says. "And per airline policy—" "Oh, please," Claire snaps, louder now. "Airline policy doesn't mean social equality. It just means someone at a desk clicked approve." A murmur spreads. Claire lifts her hands theatrically. Look at her, calm, practiced. Like she's done this before. Probably rehearsed in front of a mirror. How to look innocent while ruining everyone's flight. "That's enough," Ava says. "No," Claire replies sharply. "What's enough is pretending we're the same. You people file complaints, lawsuits, accusations, always playing victim. And the airline bends over backward so they don't get sued." The word sued hangs heavy. Ava stiffens. Claire notices. Her smile deepens. "Oh," she says softly. "That hit a nerve." Ava turns to the flight attendant. "I'd like to file a report." She intentionally spilled her drink and there she goes. Claire interrupts loudly. "Threatening legal action already, see? This is why policies exist, to protect normal passengers from this behavior." "Ma'am," the attendant says uncertainly. "Please, lower your voice," Claire scoffs. "Why? Because she's uncomfortable? I have rights too, and I don't feel safe sitting next to someone this aggressive." Aggressive. The word lands like a verdict. Ava's hands curl at her sides. She feels it, the old familiar shift, the room recalibrating around Claire's comfort. Authority bending instinctively toward whiteness, wealth, composure. "This is a lie," Ava says, "and you know it." Claire tilts her head. "Careful! Accusing me of lying is harassment under airline policy." Ava blinks. "That's not how it is when I say it is." A supervisor arrives. Security whispers. Claire folds her arms. "I want her removed. Immediately. I don't feel safe." Ava's heart pounds not from fear but disbelief. Removed? For standing still? She looks around. No one meets her eyes. As uniformed security approaches, Ava closes her eyes for half a second. "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God." Isaiah 41:10. Courage is not shouting. Courage is standing upright while the lie is spoken. "Ava Reynolds," she says clearly, I am a lawyer. I know my passenger rights. And this will not end the way you think. Claire smiles cold, satisfied. Oh, it already has. As Ava is escorted down the aisle, phones record. Headlines are being drafted in real time. Unruly passenger. Disruptive behavior. Airline responds swiftly. Claire watches from her seat. Victorious. What she doesn't know is that she has just targeted the one woman who knows exactly how to dismantle the system she's trying to protect. If you have ever been judged before you were heard, then what happens next? With Ava Reynolds will make you furious and hopeful at the same time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to follow the truth. The plane lands, but the lie spreads faster than the wheels touch the runway. The jet bridge hums like a verdict being read. Ava walks it with her head high, escorted by airline security as if dignity itself needs supervision. The commercial airline logo blurs past her shoulder, polished, confident, unquestioned. Behind her, the cabin exhales. Ahead of her, a corridor of phones waits. By the time her shoes touch the terminal carpet, the story has already chosen its angle. Unruly passenger removed from first-class cabin. A headline flashes on a monitor near baggage claim. Another scrolls beneath it. Airline enforces policy to protect passenger rights. The words look official enough to feel true. Ava stops, reads, keeps walking. A security supervisor clears his throat. Ma'am, this is routine. Airline policy. Routine, the word that turns harm into housekeeping. At the glass doors, a reporter leans forward. Miss Reynolds, were you intoxicated? Another calls out. Did you threaten another passenger? A third asks. Do you regret escalating the situation? Escalating, as if silence could spill drinks. Ava doesn't answer. She has learned what sound does in rooms already decided. She steps into the night air, the automatic doors sealing behind her like a courtroom that just recessed. Her phone vibrates. Then again. And again. A message from her firm, carefully worded, clinically kind. We're reviewing the situation. For now, please refrain from public comment. Another from a colleague she thought was a friend. This looks bad. Maybe lay low? Lay low? As if gravity were optional. In the ride share, the driver glances at her in the rearview mirror, recognition flickering. He turns the radio up. A pundit's voice fills the car, smooth and certain. Airlines are under pressure to act swiftly. Passenger rights matter, and disruptive behavior can't be tolerated. Ava closes her eyes, counts her breaths. The city slides by, bright and indifferent. At home, she peels off the stained blazer and hangs it on the back of a chair. It drips slowly onto the floor, a quiet metronome. She sits at the kitchen table, laptop open, evidence drive untouched in her bag. The case files, months of depositions, sealed exhibits, patterns that point upward feel heavier now. Not because they changed, but because the world did. Her phone rings. She doesn't recognize the number. Miss Reynolds? A calm voice asks. Female. Measured. My name is Lena Park. I'm a freelance journalist. I cover aviation compliance and civil rights enforcement. I think what happened to you tonight wasn't an isolated incident. Ava straightens. You saw the footage? Not the cabin footage, Lena says. That's curiously unavailable, but I've seen versions of this story before. Same airline, same outcome, different passengers. Ava's fingers tighten around the phone. They're calling me aggressive. They always do, Lena replies gently. It's the language of erasure, but there are logs, crew notes, timestamps, and there are people who notice when airline policy is used selectively. A knock at the door interrupts them. Ava opens it to find her sister standing there, eyes worried, arms already open. They don't speak for a moment. Collapse doesn't need narration. Later, alone again, Ava scrolls. The comments are worse than the headlines. She should know her place. If she didn't cause trouble, she wouldn't be removed. Playing the race card again. Her firm calls back, this time a partner, voice lowered. Ava, the board is nervous. This airline has relationships. We need to protect the case. Protect the case. From her. Are you asking me to step aside? Ava asks. A pause. Temporarily. She hangs up without responding. The room feels smaller. The ceiling lower. The lie thicker. She opens the bag and sets the evidence drive on the table. It hums faintly, alive with truth. She thinks of the woman in the first-class cabin, the recognition in her eyes, the ease with which the accusation formed. Not random, not impulsive. Purposeful. Her phone buzzes with a text from Lena. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. Off the record. There's a retired compliance officer who's been tracking internal discrepancies. He doesn't trust phones. Ava types back. When? The reply is immediate. Morning. Before the narrative hardens. She looks at the stained blazer again. At the slow drip finally stopping. The world believes the lie because it arrived first. But lies require maintenance. Truth, once set in motion, only needs witnesses. Ava stands, shoulders squared, not loud, not performative. Quiet endurance. She slips the evidence drive into her pocket and turns off the lights. Tonight, she lets the collapse settle. Tomorrow, she begins to rebuild. Morning light finds the cafe before the city wakes up. Ava sits near the back, hood down, coffee untouched. She chose this place because it doesn't look important. Because nothing that matters ever does at first. Lena arrives without ceremony, sliding into the chair across from her, laptop already open. No greetings, no sympathy, just work. They scrubbed the cabin footage, Lena says. Not all of it, just enough. Ava's pulse steadies. How do you know? Because scrubbing leaves fingerprints, Lena replies. She turns the screen. A timeline appears, timestamps with gaps that don't align with standard commercial airline data retention. Cabin cameras auto-sync with the flight deck every 7 minutes. Your incident spans 11. That missing block? Someone intervened. Ava leans in. That's not a mistake. No, Lena says. That's corporate negligence, wearing a necktie or worse. Intention dressed up as procedure. They scroll. A crew report surfaces, language smoothed, edges filed down. Passenger became disruptive after spill. The passive voice does the heavy lifting. No subject, no actor, no responsibility. Ava exhales through her nose. They're insulating themselves. They always do, Lena says. But insulation cracks under heat. A shadow falls across the table. A man stands there, late 60s, posture precise despite the years. He doesn't ask to sit. He waits. Miss Reynolds, he says. I'm Tom Alvarez, retired aviation compliance. I read patterns the way some people read weather. He sits, pulls a small notebook from his jacket. Paper, old school. I tracked 5 complaints over 18 months, Tom continues. Same airline. Same phrasing. Same outcome. High-value passenger alleges discomfort. Airline policy invoked. Removal justified. Video partially unavailable. Ava's jaw tightens. And no consequences. Tom nods. Until someone asks the right questions. Lena slides a document across. We're asking now. Ava scans it. Internal emails. Redacted names, but not enough. A phrase repeats like a refrain. Protect the brand. Another. Minimize exposure. The language of avoidance masquerading as professionalism. This isn't just misconduct, Ava says quietly. It's systemic. It's a firewall, Lena replies. And you walked straight into it. Ava thinks of the woman in first class, the recognition, the calm cruelty. The passenger who accused me, she knew who I was. Tom looks up sharply. You're sure? She recognized me. Before the spill. Ava taps the table. If she's connected, this isn't coincidence. It's preemption. Lena's eyes narrow. Then we're not just dealing with an airline. We're dealing with interests. They pause as a barista passes. Steam hisses. Life continues, unaware. Ava opens her bag and removes the evidence drive. Sets it on the table between them. This contains sealed filings for a federal case, patterns of discrimination, board-level awareness. If that passenger is tied to this, then what happened on the plane was an attempt to discredit me before testimony. Tom whistles low. That raises the stakes. It raises legal accountability, Ava corrects him. For everyone. Silence settles not heavy but focused, the kind that precedes motion. Ava closes her eyes for a beat. Not to escape, to align. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9. Endurance isn't passive. It's disciplined. She opens her eyes. What's our first move? Lena smiles, not triumphant, but precise. Preservation. If they can delete, they can alter. We file a motion to preserve all records now. They'll fight it, Tom says. Good, Ava replies. Then they'll leave a trail. Her phone buzzes. A notification from the airline's PR account slides across the screen. We stand by our crew and our commitment to passenger safety. Ava turns the phone face down. They're closing ranks, which means they're afraid, Lena says. Fear accelerates mistakes. They split tasks. Tom reaches out to former colleagues quietly. Lena drafts requests, lining up corroboration. Ava outlines a motion in her head, each paragraph a scaffold toward truth. As they stand to leave, Lena stops. There's something else. Ava waits. The passenger, Lena says. Her name surfaced in an internal chain. Not public-facing. Advisory role. Philanthropic board. Close to the executive suite. Ava nods once. Then she didn't just spill a drink. No, Lena agrees. She tried to spill the case. Outside, the city has fully woken. Traffic hums. Screens flash. The lie is louder now, but also heavier, requiring constant reinforcement. Ava breathes in. Straightens. This is the pivot, the moment the story turns from endurance to intent. Let them underestimate silence, she says. We'll answer with facts. They part ways without ceremony. Work to do. Timelines to meet. A motion to file before the narrative calcifies. Behind them, unseen, systems grind, emails sent, files touched, decisions made in haste. Ahead, a storm gathers not of noise, but of alignment. If you've ever watched the truth get buried under procedure, then what Ava does next will restore your faith. Like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to see how the fight really begins. As the motion is filed, the airline strikes back harder, quieter, and closer to home. The motion lands at 9:03 a.m. By 9:07, the system notices. Ava feels it not as noise, but pressure, like the air changing before a storm breaks. Her email refreshes itself. Once. Twice. Then floods. Automated response. Your request has been received. Follow-up. Please be advised this matter is under internal review. Legal notice. Cease and desist any dissemination of proprietary information. She exhales slowly. They moved fast. Lena calls from a stairwell, voice low. They've locked down access. Sources are going quiet. One of mine just pulled out, said legal is in his inbox. That's retaliation, Ava says. It's panic, Lena corrects her. And panic makes people sloppy. Tom Alvarez texts a single line. Flight ops logs are being classified. That's not protocol. Ava looks at the motion draft on her screen, tight, clean, surgical. A preservation order. No accusations yet. Just obligation. Do not delete. Do not alter. Do not pretend this didn't happen. She hits send. Across town, in a glass-walled conference room that smells faintly of citrus and money, Claire Whitmore sits at the head of a polished table. She is still immaculate, still calm, but her fingers tap once against a leather portfolio. "Who authorized this?" she asks, voice even. A junior executive clears his throat. "Legal received a preservation motion tied to last night's incident." "Incident?" Claire repeats softly. "That's a generous word." The room stills. Everyone here understands hierarchy without it being explained. "She's moving faster than expected," someone says. Claire smiles thinly. "She always did." A pause. Then, with practiced ease, "Invoke policy, limit exposure, and remind everyone this airline values safety above all else." Safety, the word that erases intent. Back at Ava's apartment, the phone rings again. This time, it's her firm. "Ava," the managing partner says, voice tight. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "There's concern," he continues, "about optics, about donor relationships. This airline sponsors—" "Stop," Ava says calmly. "If you're asking me to withdraw the motion, the answer is no." Silence stretches. "You're putting the firm at risk." Ava stands, walks to the window. The city looks different from above. Less forgiving, more honest. "I'm asking the firm to stand where it says it stands." Another pause. Then, colder. "If you proceed independently, we may have to reevaluate your position." There it is. The second betrayal. "Do what you need to do," Ava replies. She hangs up before the words can bruise further. Her phone buzzes immediately. Lena again. They just leaked a revised statement. They're framing the removal as a preventive safety measure under airline policy. "Preventive," Ava murmurs. "From what?" "From you," Lena says. "From accountability." Ava closes her eyes. The room feels smaller now, not because she's alone, but because the walls are listening. She opens a notebook paper, like Tom's, writes names, connections, timelines. The storm is mapping itself. By afternoon, the first counterstrike arrives. A courier drops a thick envelope at her door. Inside, a letter from the airline's outside counsel. Impressive letterhead. Impressive threats. Defamation. Tortious interference. Irreparable harm. They want fear to do the work. Ava reads it once, then again. She sets it down and breathes. When the storm passes, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever. Proverbs 10:25. She doesn't quote it aloud. She lets it steady her spine. At dusk, she meets Lena and Tom in a borrowed office, no logos, no glass walls. Just a table, 3 chairs, and a whiteboard. They're tightening the circle, Tom says, marking boxes. Crew are being reminded of NDAs. Maintenance logs are being updated. That's a red flag. They're erasing, Lena adds, which means there's something worth erasing. Ava nods. We need allies who aren't afraid of consequences. Tom taps the board. I know a systems engineer. Contracted. No loyalty to PR. He'll talk if we protect him. Lena adds a name beneath it. I can get a congressional staffer. Oversight committee. Quiet interest. The web grows. Then Ava's phone lights up with an unknown number. She answers. Ava Reynolds. A familiar voice, smooth and controlled. Miss Reynolds. Claire Whitmore. The room goes still. I'm calling as a concerned citizen, Claire continues. I understand you filed motions that could disrupt operations. Ava keeps her voice neutral. I've filed a motion to preserve evidence. Claire chuckles softly. You know how these things spiral? Misunderstandings become headlines. Headlines become damage. Damage to whom? Ava asks. To people who don't deserve it, Claire says. Families, employees, reputations. Ava glances at Lena, who is already recording notes. You mean consequences. A beat. Then the mask slips just enough. You should consider stepping back, Claire says. For your own good. The system doesn't reward stubbornness. Ava's reply is quiet. Neither does it reward cruelty. The line goes dead. Lena exhales. She's nervous. She should be, Tom says. She just made herself discoverable. Night falls. The city hums louder as if aware it's being watched. Ava sits alone again, the whiteboard burned into her mind, allies forming, threats multiplying. The storm is no longer distant, it's overhead. Her phone buzzes with a final message from Lena. The engineer agreed. Tomorrow, early. Ava looks at the stained blazer still hanging in the corner. A reminder. A marker of where this began. She knows what comes next. Retaliation doesn't pause, it escalates. And the closer the truth gets, the more vicious the resistance becomes. She turns off the light and lets the darkness settle not as fear, but as cover. The storm has gathered, and it is coming for everyone. The call comes at 6:12 a.m. Not a warning, not a negotiation, a collapse. Tom Alvarez's name lights up Ava's phone. She answers before the second ring. They found him, Tom says. His voice is tight in a way Ava has never heard before. The systems engineer. He was terminated overnight, locked out of everything. NDA enforcement letter delivered at dawn. Ava sits up slowly, the room still half dark. Did he say why? Done yet? Tom exhales. He didn't get the chance. Corporate security escorted him out, hard. His badge was deactivated while he was still in the building. The line goes quiet for a moment. That's retaliation, Ava says. No, Tom replies. That's a message. By 8 a.m., the message spreads. Lena texts from across town. They just filed an emergency injunction. They're trying to block your preservation order before the judge even hears it. Ava dresses without looking in the mirror. She already knows what she'll see resolve, layered over fatigue. Professionalism stretched thin by constant defense. Her phone buzzes again. This time it's her firm. We've decided to place you on administrative leave, the managing partner says, voice rehearsed. Effective immediately. Ava stops walking. Say that again. This is temporary, he continues quickly. Until the matter stabilizes. You mean until I stop? Silence. You're choosing access over integrity, Ava says. We're choosing survival, he replies. Ava ends the call. Her hand trembles not from doubt, but from the cost of standing alone. By mid-morning, the airline's counteroffensive becomes visible. A press release drops. Polished. Clinical. Independent review confirms crew acted in accordance with airline policy to ensure passenger safety. Independent. The word floats, unchallenged. Lena calls, fury barely contained. They're burying it under process. They're saying the footage was corrupted. Hardware malfunction. Ava laughs once short, humorless. That's convenient. They're also floating your name in a different context, Lena adds carefully. Ava closes her eyes. What context? Difficult attorney. History of confrontations. They're building character assassination. Not illegal, just effective. The room feels heavier now. The air thicker. Ava opens her laptop and refreshes the docket. Denied. The judge hasn't ruled yet, but the airline's injunction has stalled access. Evidence frozen in limbo. Time weaponized. This is the breaking point, not loud, not cinematic, just suffocating. She drives without destination, city streets blurring together. Billboards advertise trust, safety, reliability. Words drained of meaning. At a red light, she checks her phone again. A voicemail from an unknown number waits. She plays it. Ava Reynolds. Claire Whitmore's voice purrs. I tried to help you step away gracefully. You didn't listen. The light turns green. Ava doesn't move. You see what happens when you force people's hands, Claire continues. Your allies disappear. Your firm abandons you. This is the part where sensible people stop. The voicemail ends. Ava pulls over and rests her forehead against the steering wheel. For the first time since the plane, doubt creeps in, not about truth, but about endurance. How much can one person absorb? She thinks of the engineer jobless by breakfast, of Tom, exposed, of Lena, targeted. of the evidence drive now trapped behind injunctions and excuses. The system isn't just resisting, it's crushing. That night, Ava sits alone in her apartment, lights off, city glowing through the window. The stained blazer still hangs in the corner. She hasn't touched it. It feels like a witness. She scrolls through the comments again, worse now. See? Even her firm knows she's trouble. Airline did the right thing. Play stupid games. Her phone vibrates. A text from Lena. I'm sorry. I don't know how to get around this. Ava types, deletes, types again. We don't go around it. We go through something else. She sets the phone down and lets the silence press in. This is where people quit. This is where the story usually ends quietly, off camera, framed as prudence. Ava stands and walks to the window. The city looks endless from here, systems stacked on systems, each one daring her to try. She closes her eyes, not to escape, to anchor. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Psalm 46, 1. The words don't erase the pain, they reframe it. She opens her eyes with a different kind of clarity. The airline has frozen evidence. Her firm has frozen support. So she stops playing defense. She reaches into her bag and removes the evidence drive. The one thing they don't control yet. Ava opens a fresh document and begins to write not a motion, not a response, a strategy. If the courts are stalled, the chain must be cleaned elsewhere, independently, publicly, irrefutably. She calls Tom, then Lena. We change the battlefield, Ava says when they answer. No more requests. No more waiting. Tom hesitates. What are you thinking? Ava's voice is steady, now quiet, resolved. A clean chain. We find records outside the airline's custody. Maintenance vendors, federal archives, anything that timestamps their edits. Lena inhales sharply. That's risky. So is silence, Ava replies. And they've shown us what waiting costs. Another pause. Then Lena says, I know a contractor, FAA adjacent. If anyone can cross-check logs, it's him. Tom adds, I can reach an old contact at the oversight office. Off the books. The pieces begin to move again, not loudly, but decisively. Ava looks at the stained blazer one last time and finally takes it down. She folds it carefully and places it in a drawer, not as a reminder of humiliation, as proof of ignition. Tonight, she doesn't sleep. She plans, because the system just made its biggest mistake. It assumed breaking her would end the story. If you've ever stood alone while the system closed ranks against you, don't look away now. What Ava does next will remind you why truth is dangerous to power. Like, subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices. With the courts stalled and allies threatened, Ava makes a move no one sees coming, one that turns faith into leverage and forces the truth into the open. Ava stops thinking in hours. Time becomes pressure instead applied, released, reapplied like a vice tightening around a single point of truth. The apartment no longer feels like a home. It feels like a staging area. Papers cover the table, not stacked or labeled, but spread, overlapping, alive. Her laptop hums constantly, cooling fan working harder than usual, as if it understands the urgency better than most people. She doesn't rush. That's the mistake power expects. Instead, Ava moves with deliberate stillness, the way she did in courtrooms before hostile benches and skeptical juries. She rereads logs not for what they say, but for what they avoid saying. She listens to silences in phone calls. She notices how people breathe before answering questions they were warned not to hear. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, the system reveals its first fracture. It comes quietly, through a contractor who never intended to be brave. He doesn't give names. He doesn't give speeches. He gives timestamps. Ava listens as the man explains how maintenance metadata works, how flight systems talk to each other, even when someone tries to silence them. How redundancy is built into aviation, not for honesty, but for survival. He never says the airline's name. He doesn't have to. The architecture is universal. You can erase one copy, he says, voice low. You can even erase two, but you can't erase the echo unless you know where all the mirrors are. When the call ends, Ava doesn't smile. She exhales, slow, controlled. This is the clean chain, not a single heroic reveal, not a miracle, just alignment. She cross-references the timestamps with public FAA records, mundane, boring, untouched by urgency. Then with a third-party vendor's automated updates. Then with an internal memo that should have been routine but wasn't. Each source alone means nothing. Together, they form a line so straight it feels inevitable. Ava leans back and closes her eyes. For the first time since the plane, she doesn't feel chased. She feels anchored. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. Proverbs 16:3. Faith doesn't replace strategy. It steadies the hand that executes it. By morning, Lena arrives quietly, slipping in like someone who knows this space isn't safe for raised voices. She takes in the table, the screens, the density of thought hanging in the air. You found something, Lena says. Ava nods. Enough. Tom joins them later, older shoulders tense with the weight of what he's risked. Ava doesn't thank him. Gratitude can come later. Right now, clarity matters more. They don't outline a plan. They inhabit one. Ava speaks in complete sentences, not bullet points, not hypotheticals. She explains how the airline tried to create a closed loop, how they assumed all meaningful data lived inside their walls. She shows how the walls were never airtight, how every edit created a shadow somewhere else, how those shadows now align. Lena listens, eyes sharp, already translating legal precision into public consequence. This doesn't just show manipulation, Lena says carefully. It shows intent. Ava meets her gaze. It shows fear. They prepare the motion together, but it isn't the same kind of motion as before. This one doesn't ask permission. It presents inevitability. It includes sworn declarations from outside the airline's reach. It includes timestamps that predate the injunction. It includes a narrative so restrained it becomes devastating. No adjectives, no accusations, just sequence. By the time Ava sends it, she already knows the reaction it will provoke. And across town, in a space where glass and steel pretend to be neutral, Claire Whitmore feels the shift before she sees it. She is halfway through a lunch she isn't tasting when her phone vibrates once, twice, then again. Insistently. She glances down, expecting reassurance. Instead, she sees panic. A message from counsel, stripped of polish. We have a problem. Another. Motion filed with third-party corroboration. A third, shorter still, judge requesting immediate response. Claire's hand stills. For the first time since the cabin, her composure requires effort. She excuses herself without explanation, heels clicking too sharply against marble floors. Inside a private office, she closes the door and finally lets her face harden. How? She demands into the phone. On the other end, someone speaks too quickly, explains too much, mentions contractors, mentions metadata, mentions words Claire does not like: independent, external, immutable. She sits. This wasn't supposed to happen. The system was supposed to be a closed-circuit airline policy, feeding legal defense, feeding public perception, feeding silence. That was the design. That was always the design. And yet, Claire remembers Ava's voice on the phone, quiet, unyielding, not emotional, not reactive, prepared. Claire tightens her grip. Contain it, she says. Delay if you have to. We can't, the voice replies. The judge's order, it's already moving. The call ends. Back in Ava's apartment, the air feels different again, not lighter but cleaner. Like a window cracked open after smoke. Lena refreshes her email and lets out a breath she's been holding. The court acknowledged receipt. They're scheduling an emergency hearing. Tom sits heavily. That was fast. They had to, Ava says. Once the chain is clean, delay becomes exposure. Her phone vibrates. An unfamiliar number, she answers. Ava Reynolds, she says. Claire's voice returns, still controlled, but thinner now. Stretched. You're enjoying this. Ava doesn't respond. You've made your point, Claire continues. This doesn't need to go further. This hasn't gone anywhere yet, Ava replies. It's only just become honest. You think you're dismantling something, Claire snaps. You're standing in front of it. Ava's voice remains even. I've stood in front of it my entire career. The difference is I'm not alone anymore. A pause. Ava hears breathing on the other end. Controlled, but faster than before. You don't understand what you're touching, Claire says. Ava looks at the evidence spread before her, facts that don't flinch, timestamps that don't negotiate. I understand it perfectly. The line goes dead. The hearing happens without spectacle. No cameras, no grand speeches, just questions asked with new seriousness, answers that stumble, language that tightens under scrutiny. When the judge issues the order broader this time, firmer, it feels less like victory and more like gravity reasserting itself. Evidence preserved, logs released, oversight notified. Ava reads the order once, then again, letting it settle not as triumph, but confirmation. She steps away from the table and stands at the window. Below, the city moves, unaware of the shift that just occurred. That's how real change always happens, quietly, until it isn't. Lena joins her. They're boxed in now, Ava nods, which means they'll lash out. Tom exhales. Reckoning's coming. Ava closes her eyes for a moment, not in exhaustion, but in resolve. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14. 1:4 stillness. She's learned. Isn't inactivity, it's control. She turns back to the room, to the people who stayed. To the work that remains. Let them come, Ava says softly, because the truth is no longer fragile, and the system that tried to break her has just revealed exactly where it can be broken in return. The room doesn't look like justice. No jury box, no flags, no raised bench. Just a hearing room with pale walls, microphones set too low, and a quiet audience that understands something irreversible is about to happen. Ava sits at the table nearest the aisle. Her posture is relaxed, not casual, not defensive. Still, centered. The way she learned to sit when she knew the facts would do the speaking. Across the room, Claire Whitmore takes her seat with practiced elegance. Her hair is perfect, her suit immaculate. If anyone were judging by appearances alone, the story would already be written. That's what Claire has always relied on. The judge enters without ceremony. The room rises, then settles. A court clerk announces the matter, voice flat, procedural, no drama, no spectacle, and yet everything that matters is here. Ava listens as the airline's counsel begins. The words come smoothly at first, rehearsed phrases about safety protocols and discretionary authority. Airline policy is invoked like scripture. Passenger rights are referenced abstractly, selectively. The tone is calm, reasonable, crafted to reassure. But the calm doesn't hold, because the questions come next, not accusatory, just precise. Counsel, the judge asks, can you explain why the cabin footage shows a discontinuity exactly 11 minutes long? A pause, a fraction too long. Ava doesn't look up. She already knows the answer won't satisfy. The lawyer pivots, mentions technical anomalies, data corruption, unforeseeable glitches. The judge nods once. And the independent contractor's metadata? Does that also glitch? The air shifts. Ava feels it not as triumph, but alignment, like a lock clicking open. Documents appear on the screen. Side-by-side timelines. External records layered against internal edits. Each one calm, each one unarguable. The clean chain does its work without commentary. The airline's counsel clears his throat. Words slow, Sentences stretch. The rhythm breaks. Then the judge turns not to the lawyer but to Claire. "Miss Whitmore," the judge says evenly, "you were present on the flight." Claire straightens, smile restrained. "Yes, Your Honor." "You initiated the complaint." "Yes." "And you have advisory ties to the corporation currently under investigation in a separate civil matter?" A flicker, just a flicker, crosses Claire's eyes. "Advisory," she repeats. "Philanthropic. Yet you recognized Miss Reynolds before the incident," the judge continues. "Is that correct?" Claire's fingers tighten around her pen. "I don't recall." Ava lifts her head for the first time. "Your Honor," she says calmly, "may I clarify?" The judge nods. Ava speaks without heat, without edge. "Miss Whitmore referenced my litigation history before the spill. That information was not public-facing at the time." Silence follows. Not stunned silence. Weighted silence. The kind that settles when the narrative fractures. The judge looks back to Claire. "Do you wish to revise your statement?" Claire opens her mouth, closes it. The room breathes as one organism now, attention fully aligned. The audience, journalists, observers, staff, feels the shift. This is no longer about an airline incident. It's about intent. The judge continues, voice steady. "We have before us a pattern of selective enforcement, evidentiary alteration, and if substantiated coordination designed to discredit a witness in a pending matter." Ava feels the word witness land not as a burden, but as truth finally named. The airline's counsel attempts to interject. The judge raises a hand. "No," she says. "We're past interruption." She turns to Ava. "Miss Reynolds, you were removed under the assertion of passenger safety." "Yes, Your Honor." "And did you at any point raise your voice, make threats, or engage in disruptive behavior?" Ava meets the judge's gaze. "No." The judge nods once. "The evidence supports that." Claire exhales audibly. For the first time, the composure cracks not dramatically but unmistakably. She shifts in her seat. The armor no longer fits. The ruling comes not as a flourish, but as a conclusion. Evidence suppression is found, preservation orders expanded, oversight agencies notified, sanctions considered, testimony compelled. Each sentence tightens the circle. When the judge finishes, there is no applause, no gasp. Just the heavy understanding that something permanent has occurred. The lie has nowhere left to stand. Ava closes her eyes for a brief moment, not in relief, but in gratitude. The Lord loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of his unfailing love. Psalm 33, 5. When she opens them again, Claire is standing abruptly, unsteadily. "This is a misunderstanding," Claire says, voice sharper now. "You're turning procedure into persecution." Ava remains seated. She doesn't need to rise. "Procedure without truth is abuse," Ava says quietly. "And persecution doesn't require noise, just power." The judge signals for order. Claire sits, jaw tight, eyes fixed ahead. The reckoning is complete not because she was humiliated, but because she was exposed. Outside the room, cameras wait. Inside, Ava gathers her things with unhurried care. She doesn't rush to speak. She doesn't savor the moment. She walks out. The hallway is brighter than she expects. Reporters step forward. Questions spill out. "Miss Reynolds, do you feel vindicated? Is this a win for civil rights? What happens to the airline now?" Ava pauses not for the cameras, but for herself. "This isn't about winning," she says. "It's about accountability. Systems don't correct themselves. People do." She steps past them into the daylight. Lena catches up, breathless. "They're already backtracking. Statements, apologies. They should," Ava replies. "But that's not the point." Tom joins them, eyes wet, smile restrained. "You did it," Ava shakes her head gently. "We did what was required." She looks up at the sky, clear, indifferent, vast. Somewhere above it, planes cross invisible paths, systems humming, assumptions intact, but not untouched. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly? Micah 6:8. Justice done, mercy chosen. Humility intact, that is the true reckoning. The silence that follows justice is different from peace. It does not rush in with applause or arrive wrapped in celebration. It settles gradually, like dust after a long collapse, revealing what remains standing when the noise finally dies. Ava closes the door of her apartment and rests her palm against the wood. The city hums outside, unchanged, unconcerned. Inside, everything feels altered, not lighter, but aligned. For the first time since the flight, her breath moves freely through her chest, unblocked by anticipation or defense. Morning headlines break with restraint. The airline announces a settlement agreement. The wording is careful, engineered by attorneys and consultants trained in reputation management. The statement acknowledges procedural failures, commits to institutional reform, and confirms oversight mechanisms. A carefully scripted executive apology follows, measured, neutral, designed not to inflame investors or disturb confidence. The executive's voice is smooth. His regret is technical. Ava watches without comment. The settlement does not center her pain, it centers correction. That matters more. The agreement forces the airline to publish enforcement data across all cabins, to subject its policies to external review, and to accept formal brand accountability not as marketing language, but as obligation. The system is required to change where it once relied on silence. She turns off the television before the analyst commentary begins. Vindication is loud. Justice is quiet. Lena calls mid-morning. Her voice carries relief edged with disbelief. They're already shifting the narrative, talking about values, about growth. They always do, Ava replies. That's how institutions survive exposure. And you? Lena asks. What do you do now? Ava looks around the room. The table is clear. The evidence is filed. The chaos has been replaced with order. Now, she says, I teach. She walks later through the park as daylight filters through trees, landing softly on paths worn smooth by repetition. Parents push strollers. Runners pass without noticing her. Life continues, unaware that a quiet line has been crossed somewhere above its head. At a cafe nearby, a screen shows the airline's logo beside words like renewal and commitment. The branding is impeccable. Ava studies it without bitterness. She understands the distinction now. Reputation can be managed. Truth must be lived. Her phone vibrates. A message from Tom. Oversight confirmed. Independent monitors installed. This one sticks. Ava replies with 2 words. Thank you. Another message appears. A name she has not saved but recognizes immediately. Claire Whitmore. Ava hesitates, then opens it. I have resigned from all advisory positions, the board insisted. I won't contest it. There is no apology, no reflection, only consequence. Ava closes the message without replying. Closure does not require conversation. At home, she opens a drawer and removes the blazer. Cleaned now, pressed, ordinary again. The stain is gone, but the memory remains, no longer sharp enough to wound. She hangs it by the door, not as armor, not as trophy, as witness. She sits at her desk and opens a new document, not a filing, not a defense, a syllabus. She writes deliberately, each word measured by purpose rather than urgency. Law students, compliance officers, community advocates. People who need to understand how injustice survives inside procedure and how truth survives inside discipline. At the top of the page, she types, dignity is structural. She pauses, then adds a second line. Why justice requires more than good intentions. The work ahead feels heavier than the battle behind her, but cleaner. Honest work always does. As evening approaches, the city outside softens. Lights flicker on in windows. Somewhere, an aircraft passes overhead, unseen, steady, moving forward on invisible lines of trust and regulation. Ava stands at the window and watches until the sound fades. She thinks of the first-class aisle, the spill, the smirk, the assumption that humiliation would end the matter before it began. She thinks of the silence that followed and the faith that steadied her when support fell away. The Lord will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. Psalm 37:6. Victory did not arrive as triumph. It arrived as correction. The empire did not collapse. It adjusted. It learned under pressure. That is the truest form of accountability change forced by truth rather than comfort. Ava closes the blinds and turns off the light. Tomorrow will bring new cases, new resistance, new quiet injustices hiding inside polite systems. She will meet them prepared, not hardened, not naive, just ready, because dignity is not granted by status, policy, or permission. It is defended patiently, relentlessly, by those willing to stand when silence is expected. If you have ever been judged before you were heard, if you have ever felt the system close ranks against you, remember this story. Like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices, because dignity is not given, it is defended. This story reminds us that God does not promise a life without injustice, but he promises presence within it. Faith is not retreat. It is endurance with direction. When we stand in truth, even quietly, systems shift. And when they do, others are spared the cost we paid.